So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Committee of the Whole for September 6th. I'm Councillor Wainwright chairing. The rest of Council is either here tonight in person, or Councillor Rentoul is participating virtually via Zoom. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting tonight, and in fact the entire town of Sydney is within the traditional territory of the Wasanich Nation, and we thank them for their stewardship of these lands for millennia. So I'd like to start with the approval of the agenda. We have one late item, which is a piece of correspondence 7A2. Are there any additions or amendments, or would someone like to move the agenda as amended?
I'll move the agenda as amended. Second.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The first item on the agenda is public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or make comments about any items on the agenda tonight. There is also a public participation period after the presentation by the proponent. So you can make comments or ask questions now, or you can wait until after the presentation. At any rate, if you are interested in speaking during public participation, I'd ask that you approach the microphone, give us your name and address. So would anyone like to speak during public participation? Sir? And if you could push the button on the base there to turn on the red light. Just on the microphone. Great.
Alrighty, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. I realize that what I have to say is probably not all that grand in the scheme of things that you people deal with. I find that people being allowed to say what they have to say makes them feel more comfortable and whatever. I'm here. We bought a property in Sydney, 2130 James White Boulevard, and the only caveat we had on buying the house was that we would be able to put a building on there, and it would be a retirement business for my wife. Through a series of miscommunications and misunderstandings and gross negligence on the part of our contractor, who is now in Costa Rica with $30,000 of our money, we find that we have to come here and apply for a variance. When we applied for the building permit, it was granted. Somebody showed up, and it was 10 square feet over, so we're applying for a variance to increase square footage. I contacted the contractor about this. He said, we'll submit it. If they approve it, fine. If they don't, we'll redo the plans. It was approved. The foundation, the hole was dug for the foundation. We had an inspection come over, and they said we had to apply for a variance from the Department of Highways for being right along the Pat Bay Highway there. And we did that, and it was granted, and we were told we could proceed, so we poured the foundation. The building started to go up. What it was a pile of rotting wood infested with rats and ants when we moved in there. 2.5 tons that I took apart with a shovel and a pickaxe and a crowbar and a wheelbarrow, literally 2.5 tons. What it is now is a retirement project. We own 2 show dogs, and for my wife to groom them at home, it makes a lot more sense, because you get the dog all pretty, take it back, and it gets dirty when it's out. We were, after the foundation was poured and the building went up, we were again visited by the inspector, who said we put a stop work order on, saying it was too close to the fence. Mistake by my part was that when I asked about it in the offices, they said 4.5 feet from the fence. But what I didn't realize was that was just for a temporary structure. We have a permanent foundation that's been poured. As far as the impact on the neighborhood, it's negligible. The only comments we've had have said that they're happy it's there because it's blocking the noise from the highway. I don't really know what I'm doing here other than saying my piece. I don't know where this goes or how this goes. But what your decision, either way, will be a life-altering decision for us, because if it's not approved, we'll be out $100,000. And our purpose for buying the property won't be there. I understand that we fall within too close to the fence, where when I was told it was 4.5 feet, we went 5. We have tried to comply with all the regulations and all the rules and everybody we've talked to. And still I find myself here with this problem. I was told on the other side that it probably wouldn't be a problem, and it was just a matter of getting everything approved, and they've approved it on the other side. And where it goes from there, they told me there was a presentation here tonight. I don't know what happens now.
So, thank you for coming and speaking. You're actually on the agenda as item 7B, which is coming up in a little bit. And at that point, you're going to have an opportunity to make a presentation, basically say, you know, what you've just said, and council would then ask you any questions, have the discussion, and make whatever decision we're going to make. So,
Okay.
I'm going to just ask you politely if you wouldn't mind sitting
I'll
down
sit over
until
there,
that point, and then, you know, I think we've all heard you, but we're probably going to ask you some questions. Okay? Thanks. Okay, is there anyone else that wants to speak during public participation? And for the third and final time, would anyone like to speak during public participation? Okay, I'm going to call that the end of public participation then, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of August the 8th.
Move the minutes be approved as presented. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, amendments, corrections? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we're moving on to item 7A. This is a development permit application number DP 100836. This is for 10473 Resthaven Drive to develop a 2.5-story 9-unit multi-unit residential townhouse development. And we've got a presentation by the applicant, which is Joe Newell. Does staff want to introduce this?
Through the chair, I can maybe see if Ms. Verhagen is prepared to provide an introduction.
Or we could just let the proponent present.
Absolutely.
Okay, not seeing anything from staff. If Mr. Newell would like to, the floor is yours.
Just advance. Supposed to sit there or stand here?
Yep.
And when you point the finger, just point it at the computer on the screen.
Yeah, we just have to share the screen so the people that are watching via the internet can see what we're talking about, including our colleague.
Okay. Okay, got it. Is there a pointer in there? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good evening. My name is Joe Newell, Joe Newell Architect, and I'm representing Wayne Hopkins of HFT Ventures as the developer. I'm here with Brad Forth, who's the landscape architect, and he's going to say a few words when I finish my presentation. So this project is for 9 units, 9 2.5-story townhouse units on the site. It's replacing an existing 3-unit townhouse project with a paved forecourt. This is an infill project, and as such, we started the design by looking at the. Oops, sorry. There we go. Sorry, which way do I point it? At that.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. There, got it. Okay, so we started looking at the surrounding neighborhood for this project, and looking at the kind of 8 to 10 year history of this area as it's been developing. It started off, the site is the red rectangle there, and 2014, obviously we had I think it was a playing field for the school, that's what I was told, but a field anyway, undeveloped, and the properties along the south side of Resthaven were all single family dwellings. with the existing two-story townhouses to the east and another small development to the north. Since then, of course, we've got I think it's called an intensive use single-family neighborhood in that field, and then we've got a number of townhouse developments appearing on the south side of Resthaven. So the area is in development. It's in flux, and what we're proposing, we feel, is in keeping with the direction that the whole neighborhood is taking. We developed a set of criteria for the project. So this is just a series of shots that I'll try to refer to a few of them. The existing property, of course, is the hacienda-style townhouses in the second one from the right at the top there. Can I get rid of that little window? It doesn't matter. It's just bugging me. So anyway, we started looking at a set of criteria to help us develop this site, trying to emulate the setbacks of the existing developments around the site, the townhouses and the single-family dwellings to the east. Try to maintain a building height that's in keeping with the neighbors. Obviously, we're meeting the zoning bylaw of being 2.5 stories, and the height of the building is actually in keeping with the single-family dwellings to the east, in that they're mostly pitched roofs with 2 stories and a pitched roof above them. We're trying to maintain the existing vegetation as much as possible. There wasn't very much on the site, but we're removing 1 tree and we're maintaining 3 existing trees, including the small tree on the boulevard. We're maintaining the access point. Sorry, let me just go back here a wee bit. So we're maintaining the access driveway for the site on the east side of the site, and then minimizing upper windows of the project to avoid not minimizing windows, but minimizing where they're going to be overlooking adjacent properties. Avoiding walkout decks on the upper floors where they're going to be overlooking adjacent properties, and minimize the outdoor lighting on the site too, just so there's not we're not contributing to any light pollution at night. Furthermore, we're trying to create a housing option that appeals to an underserved, we feel an underserved demographic in Sydney, that is, families that are trying to buy a house but can't afford or can't attain the single-family dwellings that are available to them. So we're providing a housing type that gives them a start at attaining a house for themselves. And these units are they're family units. They're all 3 bedrooms, or well, sorry, not all 3 bedrooms. I'll get back to that. 3 bedrooms are all on the same floor, on the top floor. So it's not like a 2-bedroom with a flex space down below. It's they're 3-bedroom suites. So true family units. Ample storage space is being provided because we are talking about families, and what family doesn't need it. And then providing that flex space still on the ground floor, but not calling it a bedroom. We're leaving it up to the owners to decide how that's used, whether it's a family room or a rec room or an office or a workshop or just storage, more storage. And then we're providing a good deal of outdoor space for each suite as well, whether it's on the ground floor, at grade access from the main floor, or rooftop outdoor space for 8 of the units. So, and finally, we wanted to make the townhouses as attainable as possible, not affordable, because that means different things for different people. Obviously, some people can afford a lot more than other people, but attainable meaning the price of a townhouse is attainable for a lot of these families, where the price of a single-family dwelling perhaps is not. So with all that, we're pleased to present the town's. Sorry, that slide was just about attainability. So this is the project is called the Towns at Resthaven. 9 units with every unit has a garage. It's in 2 buildings on the site with the driveway separating the buildings. So this first slide is of the site plan with the main floor shown for the suites. Again, we've got the driveway coming in the existing location. The 2 buildings are situated so that there's some movement in the site plan as well. We pushed the first unit back, partly to improve the access to the garage and partly to get some movement in the building facades as well. So it's not just a static rectangular block. All the units, or most of the units, have that outdoor space accessed off the great room on the main floor. The 2 units that don't have that outdoor space, the two middle ones there, they're brown in color. They have the rooftop deck, but they're also designed to be adaptable for accessibility. So we've got a central elevator space shown there, so a future elevator could be installed, and that has access from the lowest level of the parking up to the roof deck. Other things to note, we're doing, we show the permeable paving on the site, but the geotechnical consultant has told us that the soil doesn't really lend itself to recharging from rain, like recharging the groundwater from rainwater. So we're going to be doing detention cells. Sorry, sounds bad, but stormwater cells under the driveway that will be used for irrigation during rainwater events. The lower level, sorry, I'll go back. One thing I wanted to mention too, we are providing a storage area for garbage containers just off the driveway here. It's called an outdoor flex space. That is if we need it for storing the recycling and garbage bins on garbage pickup day. So it's not intended to be a permanent garbage storage. On the lower level, we've shown in each garage where there's space for those garbage bins, and they'll just be pulled up to that space if the collection company decides that's the way they want to operate. If they want to just pick up the bins at each person's front door, then that's what they can do too. And then that flex space will just become an outdoor space. We'll put some benches in there so it can be used as an amenity space by all the residents. What else? So all the suites have some form of the flex space. So these suites have a space that can be used as an actual room. The 2 units at the front here will have a smaller space that's going to be used for storage, just because we had to push those garages forward, and we lost that flex room in those suites. The upper floors, like I said, all but 2 of the suites have 3 bedrooms on that upper floor. The 2 accessible suites or adaptable suites will just have 2 bedrooms because they have a larger bathroom that will be designed to be so it can be fully accessible if needed. And then, like I said before, we've got that central elevator space in each suite. It's not going to be built with the elevator, but the option is there for the future residents to put one in if they desire. And that elevator can go up to the roof, although if those residents decide they want to put an elevator in, then it will require a variance. The roof plan, the red area on the roof plan is the area that we're allowed to have a projection above the roof, and the blue areas are where we're actually projecting the stairs up to the roof level. So the elevator will be slightly outside of that and will require a variance if they decide they want to do that. Each roof deck has a planter located on the sides that overlook the neighboring properties. That was one of the things we did to address a concern that some of the neighbors had, that these units with the roof decks would be overlooking their backyards. So we wanted to try to force the residents to have to step back. They can't go right to the edge and peer over. They got a planter there that will be planted with some kind of screening vegetation. to keep them back, and so they can't look over so easily. It'll be more of a distant view than a straight down view. And the paving for the roof decks will be at the choice of the residents, whether that's wood tile or concrete tile or whatever other type of decking material they want to put up there. And the planters themselves will be doing more screening between the suites. So these planters here will be planted with material that will help to separate the decks, and then any other planters will be the residents' choice of what kind of vegetation they put in there. So the elevations are, the building is designed as, contemporary in style, but we don't want to call it modern so much. Modern to us kind of indicates something that's, monotone in color, stripped of any kind of fenestration, or more kind of cold and hard, where we wanted to try to make the buildings feel more inviting and warm, residential in style. So one of the things we've also done is we've warmed up the colors a bit from our first version of this was a lot darker and more contrasting and colder colors. So we've made an effort to warm the colors up, and we've also introduced the wood look elements for the balconies and the eyebrows over the windows and the front doors. That'll be for the eyebrows and the balconies, we'll be using wood tone product. I'm not sure if I'm running out of time here, but using a stained wood tone product, so it looks like wood, feels like wood. The stain has the effect of a stained wood, and then we'll be doing the same thing for the doors, which will be fiberglass, but will be stained to look like wood. I think, the elevations, the parapet at the roof deck will be either a solid parapet wall or a picket rail, and then those planters that I talked about will be behind that. More elevations of the block at the rear, the 3 units at the rear with the side facing north and the garages facing south. And then these are just some of the views of the project to show what I was talking about with pushing some of the units back to get some movement in the facade and create a space for some signage, and make that first unit feel a little bit different from the other ones where it's got a patio instead of a roof deck. I should mention too that the front unit doesn't have a roof deck because we couldn't get the access to the roof within that setback zone. And then I'm going to turn it over to Brad Forth for the landscaping. So just...
Hi, everybody. So Joe covered the main points of this really well, but I can just touch on some of the things that are particular to landscape. One of the things is we're going to keep the one tree on the boulevard that's in pretty good condition. We're adding a second street tree there. Essentially, we, I think, are losing one tree and adding 16, so we're getting quite a lot of new vegetation on the site. We're going to maintain upright cedar hedges on the the east and the west side, so the top and the bottom of the sheet. There's some existing significant hedging there. We're going to keep that. And then part of what I wanted to do with this one is animate the interior roadway with some small flowering accent trees, because even in sort of these restricted spaces, it's nice to have some little trees and some vegetation to highlight the doorways. So we're going to use some precast planter boxes, which will contain those little trees, and you can see them in a kind of a pink color on the screen. Joe touched on the fact that we have that different textured colored material in the driveway. It may not be permeable paving because our engineer says that's not going to be effective, but we still wanted to create that textured surface there. It'll feel more like a courtyard, and the strips around it will be in broom finished concrete, so they'll feel like sidewalks. So cars can go back and forth across it, but it'll make people feel like there's a little bit of pedestrian safety inside that interior space as well. And we have, you can see on this plan on the ground level that some of the units have their little backyard spaces, which have stairs coming down from the unit with space underneath for their heat pump componentry. And then there's a small lawn and like a little shade garden and planting at the base of the existing fence and hedge that's on the neighboring property to the west. And then at the back we have we've introduced some additional trees again in a columnar form to create some nice separation between this new building at the back and the one behind it. And so each of those on the ground level will have their own backyard space and their little garden. And then the Joe touched on the fact that Unit 101, the front unit, doesn't have a roof garden, a roof deck, but it does have a much larger patio on the ground level and is south facing, so it's got a really nice aspect to it. And then I think that's sort of the front view, and you can see this sort of flex space at the front corner. The feeling is probably it won't be needed for staging recycling bins, but we don't know for sure because until that's contracted out, we wouldn't know. But if it isn't, then we'll definitely use it for social space for everybody to come out and meet your neighbor kind of thing. But each of them have, each except for the front one, have a roof deck, which is a very nice amenity space as well. So they have access to sun, vegetable gardening for urban agriculture, and all of those things that you'd want in your own house. And I think that might be it. Oh, some colors. Is that it, Joe? I think that's it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, sorry, these are just the two top colors were the original colors we had proposed, and then we lightened them and warmed them up a little bit after talking to some of the neighbors. I think some of the councilors mentioned that too. Just, try to warm the colors up a little bit. So that's all that was. And then Wayne wanted me to mention too that we're not using any fossil fuels in the heating or cooling of the building. It's all electric heat pumps, so heating and cooling in one unit. You've all seen them, the little residential units. The decibels are very quiet, and they'll be located under the. Sorry, I'll just zip back here to the. Give you an example. Sorry. Okay. So these decks, these porches at the back will have the heat pump unit under them for 7 of the units, and then 2 of the units, the 2 accessible units or adaptable units rather, will have the unit on the rooftop within that zone. And that's our presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'd like to open it up to public participation. If any members of the audience have questions for the proponent or comments they want to make about this. And if you do, please just come forward and use the microphone. And if you could give us your name and address.
My name is Usher Newstone. I live at 2044 Seawind Way. It's on the north side of this development. Now, I'm just wondering, maybe I misunderstood totally, but if the heat pumps are going to be on, is this the north side of the building? I'm sorry, this is the north side of the bond that we're looking at? The north side of the building?
Sorry, say it again. I can't hear
Is this the north side of the building that we're looking at on the bottom here? This face of the building, is this facing north?
This is facing west.
West. Okay.
The north side
Okay,
is
I'm just
the
wondering,
narrow
okay,
side.
anyways, my question is this, if there's heat pumps there facing obviously tenants or owners on the opposite of the property line, is there a maximum decibel number that Sydney allows before you can?
I'll refer that to staff, but my understanding is currently no. Sorry, you said maximum. We do have a noise bylaw, so that would
Yeah.
set a maximum, but
But
we don't have a specific for heat pumps.
Well, is that something, how does a person recommend they put something like that in? Like, I used to live in North Saanich and they had that there.
I understand. It came up at a previous council meeting, and they're actually,
It's been referred to staff to
Yep.
look at this type of decibel reading for heat pumps.
So currently, there is no bylaw that specifies a limit specifically for heat pumps. We have a noise bylaw in general, but we do not have a bylaw comparable to what North Saanich does. Council has asked staff to investigate and is going to consider adopting a bylaw like that, but that'll take time.
Okay,
At
well,
least a
the
few
reason I'm
months.
asking is like, this is not very far from the property line of the people to the north, which makes it not far from the houses on the north, they're only not far off that property line either. I'm just wondering, is it not a question I should ask now before it drives us crazy hearing this through? 'Cause our bedroom windows are on the north side of our places, you know, they face the north side, bedroom windows face north. So if we're looking at those, or listening to those.
So, my understanding is the proponent said that was the west elevation.
Yeah, facing the single-family neighborhood.
So there won't be any heat pumps facing the Harbor Landing area? Harbor Landing?
Okay,
The development store.
Harbor Landing is,
Site plan where they all are.
Harbor Landing's to the west,
So,
isn't it?
West, okay, sorry, yeah,
I'll just go back to the site plan
sorry.
here. Okay, so
You gotta say it.
there's a heat pump here,
Mhm.
one here on those 3 units, and that's facing north, so towards the harbor.
Okay, and Resthaven's over here, is it?
Okay, and then these ones, there's a heat pump there, and I'm not sure where this one was. I think it was on the back porch there.
Well, the
And
place I'm talking about, there's 4 or 5 houses up here, right? There's 4 or 5 houses here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here.
Yeah, that's right.
That's also, their bedrooms face the building, so they're not
So,
that far off.
could I ask you to use the microphone?
Sorry.
Because anybody listening, it is not likely to hear what your question is or the answer.
They're not like to hear anything, I have
So-
a voice problem.
Yep, so you've expressed some concerns about noise from the heat pumps, and
Yes.
I think we appreciate that.
Okay, and how close they are to the property line too is a major,
At this point, the plans are really of a preliminary nature, and they would be going through our process. From what I understand, they're intending to comply with all the setbacks that are
oh,
required.
yeah, okay. That was
But-
just my question, because
We're still early in the process. The plans are subject to change as they work their way through the process. And we are aware of your concerns about noise from the heat pumps.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was there anyone else from the public that, so please come forward?
My
And-
name is Marilee Newstone. I live at 2044 Seawind Way in Harbor Landing as well. But I'm here as a member of the Harbor Landing Neighborhood Committee. I was the one who arranged for the residents on Seawind who are directly affected by this project to meet with Wayne Hopkins. And we did so quite a while back. He was very nice, extremely friendly, very accommodating, and happy to deal with many of our concerns, and he did respond to us in writing, which we also appreciated. Our biggest concern was the lack of privacy due to the rooftop gardens. Now, I need to express to you that Harbor Landing is a very unusual community. We're all very close. We have a neighborhood emergency plan. We take care of each other. The 5 houses that are most affected by this building, every single person who lives there has some ongoing medical condition. Again, we look out for each other, but they view their homes as not just homes, but as sanctuaries. And so the lack of privacy that they are concerned about, given the rooftop gardens, is extremely, extremely significant to those people. We met with Mr. Hopkins, we explained that, and he, in his response to us, and I appreciate this from these gentlemen, that is one of the reasons they thought about putting in the planters on the rooftop to keep potential residents away from the railing so they couldn't look directly into everyone's backyards. However, when we first spoke to Mr. Hopkins, something he said was quite interesting. He said, we're putting in the rooftop gardens because they sell the properties. They're a really good selling point. And then he said, in his experience, after they're only, of course, they're not used in the winter. They're not used when it's rainy. And after 2 or 3 years, he's found that most residents where there are rooftop gardens don't even bother to use them at all. So I think that is significant and worth considering. The other thing is that he originally said that those planters would be, the responsibility for looking after them would be covered by strata fees, and that has changed. It's going to be up to the residents to look after them. So there is absolutely no guarantee that the residents will in fact maintain any plantings or anything else, and really there's nothing to stop them from moving the planters either. So our concern remains, and here is the question. Would eliminating the rooftop gardens affect any of the zoning regulations? Would it affect the community plan? Would it affect any of the permits that have been allowed? Does it make any difference to their ability to build this building? Because again, we're very concerned, the residents are very concerned about the lack of privacy that the rooftop gardens will create.
So
Thank you for listening.
I appreciate you raising those concerns, and we'll pass that on to the Advisory Planning Commission
Thank you very
if it
much.
goes that far, and council is now aware of it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who wishes to ask questions or make a comment? Okay, and seeing no one else, we'll end the public participation, and I'll now look to my colleagues on committee. If you haven't, I see the proponent has got his hand up to make a comment, I presume in relation to public participation. Go ahead, if you could use the microphone.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, thanks for your comments, by the way. The planters won't be, like the ones along the edge of the roof won't be the responsibility of the residents. They'll still be covered by strata where they're providing that setback ability, feature, whatever. The residents will have the option of putting their own planters up there and planting whatever they want, but we'll maintain those screening planters through the strata. Okay.
Thank you. And Councillor Duncan, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I had 2 questions. So one is regarding, so the setback there for the units 105, 106 that the letter writer has, expressed concern about being close to the existing buildings. Is that closer than the existing building that is in that location, or are those ones set right where the existing location is and the rest of the buildings are set back?
Sorry, you're asking whether the setbacks are closer than the one that's there now?
Yeah, is the
no, I
proposed building
don't.
closer?
I don't believe they are. I'll just go back to the location plans. Sorry. Too far. Okay. They're not the highest resolution, but this is the garage building now, and it is either right up to the setback or closer than the setbacks we're proposing. And also I just want to reiterate that we're not asking for any variances. We're adhering to the setbacks in the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, thank you. It's simply that it could have been, this is an older building, and it could have been placed further back then, right?
Yeah.
For the zoning. And the second one is in your pictures of your cartoons, I guess, of the buildings. Those are in the old color scheme before you updated it, or are those provided in the new
No.
softer color scheme?
Yeah, these are this is the new color scheme. The contrast is a lot higher on the screen than it actually is on the when we see the photo, the drawings, when we print them, it looks like it's really dark,
It
but
does.
that wasn't the intention. It's just because of the images we had to present and the way the screen appears, I think.
Okay.
The intent is to reduce the contrast so it's not so dark as that. Lighten the dark colors, and we did all that. And I think if you have a paper copy of the drawings, you'll see that better than you can see it here. And if not, I can provide a paper copy to show you.
I don't know if they look that much better.
Yeah, I don't.
Well,
It's hard to present, and we picked the colors using paint samples on the material that we're going to be putting on, so it's hard to represent it in a presentation, but we did make the effort to reduce the contrast and lighten up all the colors, which was the request of the neighbors.
Okay. I guess, no further questions, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who has any questions? Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few for the presenter, and thank you for your presentation. I garner there's no visitor or guest parking anywhere on the site, based on what I've seen.
There's a one, we're only required to provide one unit, one stall per unit, and that's in the garage, so there's no other parking available.
Okay, so, no, sorry, if you wouldn't mind just saying, I'm gonna have more than one. With regards to the planters, it mentions they're 16 to 20 inches away, but there's no mention of the height of them. Can you tell me what the height of the planters are?
Yeah, typically the planters are about 18 inches high, and then we'd put shrubs in those that would be like meant for permanent, as a permanent element on the deck, and they'd be 3 feet high. So you're getting up there, starting to get up to this high, so that you can't walk and like look over. I think the intention of this is really that the roof decks are fairly simple now because of the concerns of the neighbors, and so we wanted really to illustrate that we are putting these planters in critical locations to stop people from overlooking. And I guess the purchaser would then have their opportunity to put their own planters and their own outdoor furniture and things like that. But those planters, I know the residents concerned that they be moved, but they'll weigh too much. They won't be able to move those. They're permanent. And the other paving will be, basically the planters are set on the roofing membrane, and then the other paving material is cut around the planters, so you can't pick them up and like move them around. They're not on wheels or anything like that.
Thank you. Just a couple more, if I may, Chair. You mentioned the condominium single-family this is going to be more for Mr. Newell. The condominium and the housing market and not single-family residence. Do we have an estimated price point that we're looking at for these units?
I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, do we have an estimated price point, what you're looking at maybe?
No, I don't have that information. That's Wayne.
Oh, okay,
the
and he's
developer.
not able to, he's not here, of course. And the last question I have is, it mentions, and this is maybe you might be able to answer this as well, the construction management plan. And I'm wondering, given that area and the lack of parking with tradespeople, if he has investigated or reached out to possibly the church not too far away to see if they could arrange some kind of an agreement to provide parking for the tradesmen, so that they're not clogging up Resthaven, which is already a major concern for people.
Yeah, that would be Wayne's call, but I'm sure he'd be, he does work directly with the contractors, so I'm sure he'll come up with a plan like that to accommodate all the construction parking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else on committee? Go ahead, Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So just a few comments on things I appreciated. The extra trees that you're adding, dressing up the interior with additional little shrubs and flowers and things. I've gone to other municipalities where they have developments like this, and it's not pleasant. Anyway, so I appreciate that. So the heat pumps, getting back to that, I think you're putting them underneath to hopefully reduce the sound. I'm just wondering, I know we don't have that bylaw in place, as we've said, and staff are looking into that, but based on, I don't know if you've had experience with other municipalities in terms of bylaws that they have and how your heat pump and the decibel level for the heat pump you plan to use, how that compares to what's allowed or permitted in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, the actual question hasn't come up in the past, but just to give you some idea, the units that we're proposing for this, they're Daikin or Samsung units, and they're designed to heat and cool one unit, so they're not overstressed in providing all the heat energy is required for these suites. They'll be running at low speeds. The fans aren't pushing out a lot of air. It's not like, I guess, by comparison, it's not like those old school fan units where you've got a big open top and they're blowing the air straight up, and they're very noisy. They're not like that at all. The decibels are 33 to 46 approximately for those for these units we're proposing here. And just by comparison, that's equivalent to a quiet library, or well, Wayne said a moderate rainfall, whatever that is. So they're not noisy units. I have two of these units. They're not the same, but they're Fujitsu units on my house. And well, I'm not a very good judge because I'm deaf, but I don't hear them at all. I can't hear them. They're running full time. They're cooling in the summer. They're heating in the winter, and I can't hear them unless
Right,
I'm standing
okay.
right next to them.
Okay,
So,
good.
yeah.
Thanks for that. And then a couple other things. So I'm happy about the adaptable units. What I'm less happy about is that there doesn't appear to be parking for them. So-
The
Parking,
Yeah.
so that the parking, there's no accessible parking spaces. So presumably people buying an adaptable unit, might be looking for a space that's a bit bigger. So I'm wondering if you've made is there provision for that, or are you able to, or?
We made the garages for the adaptable units accessible.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Yeah,
I
so
missed that.
They're wide
Okay.
enough and long enough for an
Okay.
accessible stall.
Okay, okay, that's perfect, good. And, what else? Oh, so those adaptable units,
Mhm.
will you market them as that? Like I know that one of the issues that we've recently, discovered is that we have this requirement for adaptable units.
Mhm.
But how do the people that really need them know that they're available? So will you market them as being adaptable?
I believe Wayne will be doing that.
Okay.
Because I think there is a market for them.
Yeah.
Not a huge market, but there is a market. So, I believe he'll be marketing them as adaptable, not as accessible,
Yeah,
because they're not gonna be constructed as accessible
Right.
unless, maybe a purchaser buys one and says, no, I would like it to be fully accessible, in which case we've designed them so that we can do that.
right,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then just one other, I guess, comment, I guess. I know you were trying to aim for a sort of feeling with the architecture that was warm and inviting and fitting in with the neighborhood. I guess I'm not getting that warm, fuzzy feeling. So for me personally, when I look at it, quite boxy. When I look at some of the units, the other units around, peak roofs and a bit more style. So I don't know if that's something you can alter somewhat, but I'll just give you that for
Yeah.
food for thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's all for me, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rentoul?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'll commend you on what normally I wouldn't consider being proactive, but it seems in comparison to some developments, you've been very proactive here in dedicating an area for garbage and recycling. Quite often, it's been left out, to people to either put it on the sidewalks or deal with it later. And so having that space, I think, is important. It seems like a small thing, I know, but it's not on garbage and recycling collection days. So good on you for doing that. Also, the HVAC and having the foresight, to address, the heating and ventilation, air conditioning in advance, and have the property purpose designed to meet the challenges of climate change in that regard, and also to be able to plan it so it's less disruptive for your neighbors. So I'm appreciative of the effort that you've put in on that. within the staff report in the final page, the discussion section, it's page 5 of 24 of the package itself. Staff have noted some concerns for vehicular access to Unit 101. I take it that's not a surprise to the presenter and that they've been made aware of that. Forgive me if you spoke to it at some point during the presentation, but I didn't hear it. And I would like to hear from the presenter, from their perspective, the nature of a solution for the challenge that staff has perhaps noted. So I'll turn that as a question, Mr. Chair, to the presenter.
Yeah, okay. I didn't go into a great deal of detail, but in order to get the ramp to a shallow slope, which, you know, we're talking about 22 inches in height from the garage door to where the driveway, the private driveway meets the internal roadway. So it's not very high, and we've looked at it in section, we've looked at it in elevation. We've got clearance under the building. I don't know if I don't know if I have a section on this. I don't think I did the section, but try to find an elevation. Sorry, it's not me. Okay, so the unit in question is this. Is the first one, 101, closest to the street. And this elevation shows that garage door, but it doesn't show how far back we pushed it in order to ease the slope and get the clearance under the overhang of the building above. But we've done our due diligence. We've made sure the ramp works. We've made sure we've got headroom for pretty much any car. We've also got a civil engineer, Nathan Dunlop from McElhaney, and he's going to be providing a sealed drawing at the construction document stage to say that this is okay. I think he was reluctant to put his seal on the drawing at this point because we did the drawing, he didn't. But he reviewed the drawing and he confirmed our numbers, he confirmed the elevations, and he confirmed that it would all work. The other concern that the planner or the engineering department had was with regards to the turning radius. And again, I didn't include it in this presentation, but we did show a diagram showing that the average passenger vehicle will be able to maneuver into that driveway from either direction on the site. And the second unit along 102, we pushed the garage back as well. And that was at the expense of that flex space at the back of the unit, but we've acknowledged that those units are going to have a bigger storage space and no flex room, but the garages and the driveways will work.
Okay, thank you. And I do note in the recommendation from staff that they are looking to see revised plans addressing access to Unit 101 prior to this going to APC, is the way the recommendation reads. So you may need to put some thought into that if we move forward with this in terms of the timing of getting those designs and signed off by the engineer on your end. In my mind, I think it's somewhat dependent on the size of vehicle as well that someone has to be able to access in either of those scenarios you described. And so I think a purchaser is probably going to want to make sure that the garage and the location of the garage meets their personal needs. So I'm not as concerned about it, having heard what you've just said there. I'll leave my comments there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other member of committee? Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation this evening. I too, following some of the remarks made by Councillor Rintoul, I think there are a number of positives with this development. In particular, pleased to see the 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on one floor. I think that's much more family oriented than we have seen in some other townhouse plans that have come before us. I think the yard spaces with natural green space in 7 of 9 units is very positive. Again, not something we've seen all the time. And the landscape plan on the property, I think, is thoughtful. The landscape plan actually on the property, on the private property, appreciating that there's opportunity on the boulevard as well. And to Councillor Rintoul's point, positive about the HVAC and the planning that's gone in with that. My only question on the HVAC is, and then a comment is, two of the units, I believe they're 105 and 106, don't have any yard space, so will those heat pumps be on the roof for those roofs for those units? Okay, thank you. And just to the resident, well, I'll leave my comment that this is questions now. I have a question with regards to the landscaping trees that you've put on in the drive aisle and also in the backyards and that sort of thing. You mentioned about a flowering tree, and I appreciate what that can do. But when these trees were mature or approaching maturity, what size might they have, and any sort of canopy?
These would be what we call class 1 trees. They're small. They probably, like Japanese maples, things like that, that would grow 15 feet to 20 feet high maximum. And some of these trees are planted in root containment, so that'll keep them a little smaller too. And then the ones that are on the edges, like on the north edge of the site, those could be more columnar trees, probably a Schedule B type tree, which could grow 20 to 30 feet, something like that. And then the one place where we have room to actually put in a tree is on the boulevard, and that would be a larger tree like a red maple or something like that. That would be in keeping with the street trees. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the letter of rationale, it speaks to each unit will include a vertical bike storage using the steady rack system, and there's a little photograph, I think, in one of the plans showing that holding two bicycles. The staff report indicates it be located near the front entrances. Will those units actually be in the garages, or where's there room for those? Please?
Actually, this is they're hard to see, but we've got the rack tucked into the corner there beside the window. So there's space beside each front door for one bike, for visitors, for,
So these are on the outside of the unit by the
these are on
front
the
entrance?
outside of the unit, yeah. And then there's space inside the garage as well for whatever hanging racks the residents want to install. I mean, what they do inside is up to them, but we're providing that one rack outside each suite entrance.
And it holds two bicycles?
Pardon me?
It holds two. The photograph shows two bicycles. Is
Oh,
the
is it
unit you're
two?
installing
Sorry.
holding one or two?
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's right, but they're outside of the unit,
Okay.
but
so
in the entrance of each unit.
No, I appreciate the thought that's gone into this, but is the intention that the residents will be using it for their bicycles?
They may, but it's there for visitors too if they want to use it. So
Okay,
they can
but
lock
there
their
isn't,
bike up if
but of note, there
somebody
isn't space
arrives
in the
by bike.
garage for this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple of follow-ups, Chair. On the west elevation, we know this is a 2.5 story, and we can see the windows at ground level for the lower level. Are there window wells then for those windows, or only a portion of the window? Yes, in that drawing there.
Sorry, there's window wells for those.
Okay.
Yeah, right here.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I think the intent was to do them as just little piano windows, but we'll have to depress the ground a little bit below them.
Okay. And if you could bring up the drawing that shows the rooftop plan, please. So my question is, with regards to the planters that are on the edge, that we've had a good explanation of, they're not movable. Will they be the full width of the units?
Of the unit?
The full width of the unit? So if you look at unit 4,
Yes.
one.
Yeah, behind the parapet wall, behind the rail, it'll go the full width of the roof deck.
Okay. And so this is a case where you indicated or clarified that these would be managed by the strata. So,
Yeah.
I mean, stratas often manage common area. These planters are actually on the private rooftops. So the strata will have, the residents will have to allow access from a third party to manage these planters on their rooftops?
Yeah, not quite sure how that works.
Okay.
But yeah, the intent is that it be a strata responsibility to make sure that they are maintained. Maybe it's a case of one person from the strata council having access to all the roofs to see that they're being maintained, and if they're not, then they step in and do something about it. I don't know.
I can certainly appreciate the intent, to have these managed, and that the strata may have, cover the cost of it, but in a practical sense, I'll just leave it as a question.
Yeah. The other thing about them too is they're also irrigated on a common zone. So the plants will be looked after on their own irrigation zone, separate from the other plantings that people might have up there. And I know there are hose bibs on the roof in each of the garden areas, so people could use a hose to water their own container plants. But these planters, these integrated planters, are actually integrated on the system, the building system. And I'm going to choose plants that are low maintenance and pretty much look after themselves kind of plants. Don't require a lot of pruning or don't require a lot of intervention. Yeah.
Great, thank you again. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Fallon.
Thank you. I'll pick up where the mayor left off in regarding the rooftop strata planters. I would strongly recommend that you get in touch with the CHOA or VISOA. CHOA is the Condominium Homeowners Association, and VISOA is the Vancouver Island strata owners. And talk to them before you do this about putting planters on the rooftop on private property that are maintained or overseen by the strata, because I think while it's well-intentioned, I understand what you're doing and the reason for you to do this, and I think that that's a good reason. I think from a practical perspective, you are building in a problem for the homeowners, and that is going to, stratas have incredible problems because you've got people who aren't professionals managing their properties, and they don't always have the skill set. So you're building in a problem that you might want to do some homework before you put it in. So I'm going to leave that there, asking that you please do some homework on this one. And the other question I have for you, or the question I have for you, is windows, the bedroom windows. Are they all going to be opening windows? So we're not going to have a bedroom that doesn't have an opportunity for passive ventilation.
Yeah, all the windows are openable by, they're required to be by the building code for access, for firefighting access, so they all have to be openable anyway.
The reason I asked that is we recently had somebody come around that had a legal bedroom, but it was sprinklered, so
Yeah.
they didn't need to have the opening, so.
Well, I can't remember whether Sydney has a sprinkler bylaw or not.
The
but
problem
anyway.
is, though, that with, people didn't have the option to open a window, and I want to make sure that this isn't going to be a problem in this project.
I don't like that either, so I'm going to make sure all the windows are openable.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I just wanted to say too, like in addition to the planters, anytime there's common property, or sorry, not common property, but private strata property like the roof decks, there's an issue of maintenance of the roof deck as well from a drainage point of view, from a roofing point of view. So there is a necessity to have access to those roofs by the strata council or the strata anyway. Well, I mean, one of the suggestions is just to make it a bylaw within the strata rules that those plants have to be maintained at a certain height, and attention brought to the strata if there's any dead plants or anything like that. So,
Thank you very much.
Anything further from committee? And if not, we have a staff recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation that development permit application number DP 100836 to permit the construction of 9 multifamily residential townhouse units for the property at 10473 Resthaven Drive be forwarded to the Advisory Planning Commission for review and comment, subject to the condition that prior to review by the APC, the applicant provides revised plans addressing vehicular access to Unit 101 or submit plans signed by a professional engineer.
Second.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, starting with Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. At this point, I have no problems submitting this to the APC. I think the comments and the questions provided by the nearby residents have been useful and will be good for the APC to review, particularly as the rooftop patios have generated so much discussion. Getting their idea about how they contribute, I think, more to the livability of these units than anything else. I know that the speaker asked whether it affected, their ability to sell it, and I think we all know the answer would be no. People would be quite happy to buy housing without a rooftop patio. They're very nice. My dad lived in units that were very much like this in North Van with the rooftop patio, and they were great. And with the really deep planter, yeah, you couldn't get close enough to go over the side. I don't even remember if there was anything planted in it because I don't think they had a strata maintain it. But in the two units that have no access to green space outside, unless they have the rooftop garden or the rooftop patios, that is something that makes those ones in particular, even though they are the most problematic from the perspective of being close to the neighbors, ones that is a nice feature. For the heat pumps, I feel this developer has given a pretty good guarantee and a good positioning of them and knowledge of where they can go. They seem to have taken into account a lot of the problems we've had with heat pumps elsewhere in the town. When I spoke to Mr. Hopkins, he said they were same as the units they have in the John's Place development across the street. So if people want to get a hear of what those sounded like, I hope I'm not misquoting him when he's not here to defend himself, but you kind of get an idea of what those ones are like. The color scheme, I'm also still a little, and I did say this to Mr. Hopkins' face, so I don't feel bad that he's not here, was that it's still very dark, and as Councillor O'Keefe said, it's still very boxy. And I understand that this is a problem we have now with just trying to fit more living area into smaller spaces, but if the colors actually are lighter, could be lighter, or if not having the rooftop patios somehow made it look less square and boxy, that might be something for the APC to consider as well.
Okay, I've got Councillor Fallon, then Councillor Rintoul, then Councillor Garnett.
Thank you. The architecture, the shape and look of the building, I personally like them. I have no concerns with the box appearance. And that part of it is twofold. In my travels in certain parts of the world, that's a very standard shape of a building. We come from more of an Anglo and European, and we've got peaked roofs and whatnot, but building materials change, designs change, engineering changes, and we can build differently. Now, as soon as we start putting angles and make the building architecturally, and I'm going to put it in air quotes, more interesting, we up the price. Every angle has a cut, and every cut has a dollar value to it. So I'm very conscientious now that when we're looking to make our buildings look more attractive, we're also increasing the cost to the buyer. And the other part, and I think the developer has addressed it in this, is the building material and the finish. The more variety you have in finishes, the more maintenance you have. And certain finishes have, for instance, if you're getting into natural finishes, they increase the cost too. And then that is an ongoing cost to the homeowner then afterwards. So I think a lot of that has been addressed in this building, and the price for that is that you have a more utilitarian looking building. I suspect that in years from now, when it becomes part of the neighborhood, should it get to that point, it will be just part of the neighborhood. Anytime there is a change, no different than when the Seawind properties, when that schoolyard was developed. I mean, people said for years that was a schoolyard, and then it was an empty yard, and then there's all these houses that came in. So I respect and I understand, and I'm not belittling your concerns to the homeowners who came about thinking that there's going to be a loss of privacy, or what is the privacy value going to be. It is going to be different, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be bad. But I think it's going to take time, and I think what we have in this particular presentation is a developer who was open to speaking with the neighborhood before they ever came and brought this to council. And I think that is, and listened. So whether the rooftop gardens are going to be something that gets used in the future, personally, I think they will be. I think it's going to take some time. I think it's a valuable asset to the property. And I'd like to see this project go ahead. I'm certainly looking forward to what APC has to say about it, and for further input from the public, but I'm willing to support this going forward. Thank you very much.
Councillor Rintoul, then Councillor Garna.
Thank you, Chair. Somewhat like Councillor Fallett's comments, I like the looks of this proposed development. I like the looks of it from the street, from the Resthaven view. And I think that we've seen other proposals where we are critical of outdoor living space, and the rooftop patio gardens have provided that, and have provided that outlet for people living in townhouses. And I think if we can continue to address the privacy concerns of the neighbors, that it's a positive in my mind. If I made through the chair a question through to staff, just with respect to the recommendation and the segment referring to subject to the condition that prior to review by the APC, the applicant provides revised plans addressing vehicular access to Unit 101. To staff, given the comments from the applicant, that they weren't planning to have these engineered drawings until a later stage, do staff still have concerns with respect to this particular item referenced in the recommendation? Or since the report is written, has anything changed with respect to that clause?
Sure. Thank you. Through the chair to Committee Member Rintoul. Yes, staff, we would still like to see those revised plans in before APC. The reason for that being that if the driveway angles do have to change, that affects potential for retaining wall heights, landscape bed depths, exterior finishing on the buildings, and turning radius, and potentially even the building siting might have to shift a little bit. So it's better to see that now at the design stage than later, just to make sure that it all works together. Our concern is with the cross slope of the slope from the south downhill into the site, and then a slope again downhill east-west from the main drive aisle down into the garage, and how a vehicle would make that kind of dual slope turn into their unit and then out again up both slopes. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, staff, and to the chair, I support the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Garna, and then Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. I'll support the recommendation as well, but I do have a few comments that hopefully APC will take into consideration. I want to commend the proponents for reaching out to neighbors and listening, and also for working with staff to come back with a proposal that has no variances required. I also like to thank the residents who took the time to come to speak to us and let us know of their concerns. That's important as well. I guess one of my concerns, and it was with the one across the street, and we fit the parking bylaw, so we're perfectly in where we need to be. But when we don't provide guest and visitor parking in only one spot, and we're per unit, and we're developing it for families, I have concerns about what that's going to do for parking in that area. And I already saw that when I went out to visit the site, that the on-street parking is already really full. And so it's nothing against you because you're meeting what you're required to, but it's an ongoing concern that I have in terms of how that's going to impact Resthaven. and the fact that we have that as a potential north-south bicycle interactive transportation plan, and how that's all going to fit in together. As far as the planters on the roof, I wonder if maybe I would prefer some kind of screening myself. I think that would alleviate a lot of the strata concerns. But maybe the planters could be wider and taller. So, because 4.5 feet and 1.5 feet from the edge is not a lot of distance, and that still gives people the opportunity to look over. And I understand. I think their concerns are legitimate. So I think if there's a way we can address that somehow, I think that would be really helpful. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and I think of that when I listen to the comments about the building. And I was thinking, I wrote down box like myself too, and it's not so much the way the building looks for me in terms of itself, it's how it looks within the context of the rest of the neighborhood. And it doesn't suit what's around it, or even across the street from it, and that's the one concern I have with it. The building itself is fine because you're providing the rooftop access, so I understand why you went that way, but in terms of the overall context of the neighborhood, it just seems out of sync for me. But I'm glad you also mentioned that there's outdoor space, and it's because it's not really legitimate green space. And that's really my final point, is and it comes up for me most of the times when we have these kind of developments, and how we're putting so much on a lot. And I understand that there's not a lot of green space on this lot already, but I would hope that going forward in our developments, we would want to be better. And I know there's always the margin of error for price and how much you're going to make in profit margins. But I look at at what you have designed, and I thought, and it would be really, really great if it stopped at 6, and the group 3 block of 3 at the end was a created dedicated green space for trees, some grass, maybe a play area, because this wants to be for family. And that would increase the quality of life, not just for the people that are going to live in this community, but also for the neighborhood. And that's just my kind of push, and it's kind of the thing I'm hoping when I say it enough times, developers will actually listen and maybe start doing it. But it's just something I would like to see. I think it benefits our community in the long run going forward. But having said that, this is... You've come up with some compromises, and you worked with the neighbors. So as I said earlier, I commend you for that. So thank you, Chair.
Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again to the presenters this evening. And I won't repeat the positives, the several positives that I highlighted earlier, but I think this is a thoughtful development that is more family-oriented than some we have seen, and that's a positive. With regards to, just a comment to the member of the public who spoke with regards to heat pumps, there is no variances on this development application, and there is a requirement that heat pumps have a setback from the property line. And so the fact that we're not seeing a variance for the heat pumps, which we have seen in other applications, means that it currently conforms to that. While we don't have a decibel level bylaw at present, there is that setback. That's important. Coming to the rooftop gardens is the area that I think will certainly be considered fully by APC. I think it's very good that Mr. Hopkins and team consulted with the residents. We've seen the Association of Residents from Seawind come forward and express those concerns, which will be shared through to APC. There's, apart from the privacy, I took a walk occasionally through Seawind, through that property. Taking a walk recently, as was indicated tonight, there are 5 homes to the west. Actually, if I could ask that the drawing for the west elevation be brought up, please. Thank you. And taking a walk down Seawind and looking at these, when you actually look at the space between those 5 homes on Seawind that are immediately adjacent to this development on the west side, you can see through to the 2-level townhomes that are on the east side of this development. And so there are those sight lines from the Harbor Landing neighborhood in that. This is infill development, and it's very reasonable to have this number of units, this design of units as infill. And it's not that people in Seawind value those sightlines through to the townhomes on the other side. But where I come to is that the Seawind residences are 2 stories with pitched roofs. The townhomes to the east are 2 stories with pitched roofs. This is a 2.5-story development. And when you look at this elevation, we see that there's a structure required on the roof. We can see the 3 on the west side for the 3 middle units. This will be similar in some respect to the north, because there are 3 units across the back side or the north side of this property. And we see, we're told that the planters will be about 1.5 feet high, and that the planting will be another 3 feet. So we're talking about 4.5 feet high. This is a 2.5-story development that starts to look like a 3.5-story development because of that permanent structure on the roof, and because of these planters and these plantings on the top. And I think when we certainly appreciate from the presentation this evening, from the rationale that Mr. Hopkins has provided, that this adds value to the livability of this space, to urban agriculture, other components and that sort of thing. But ultimately, as one of the letter writers, who I believe is in attendance, one of the pieces of correspondence indicates, is our OCP, above all, we need to consider compatibility in the neighborhood with adjacent properties. So I know these concerns and these considerations will go forward to APC, and I will support this to go to APC. And for the residents who may not be familiar, this is a process. We're considering this as a committee. It will go to APC. They will make recommendations. APC members are members of the public, residents. They bring their recommendations back to council. Council will have further deliberation, go from there. So this is a process that we're going through, that we're starting this evening. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. Is there anything further from committee? Okay. I have nothing to add. Any questions or comments I was going to make have already been made by others, so I'll simply call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So that'll be going off to the Advisory Planning Commission, and then they will make a recommendation, and then it will eventually come back to council. So it's still many weeks. Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to item 7B on the agenda. And yeah, if you could take the screen sharing down, please. Item B is 2130 James White Boulevard West. This is a development variance permit, DV 100325. We have a presentation, if you'd like to make it, by the applicant, and that's Mr. Kevin McKay. Yes. Okay, you've already said your bit. If you want to repeat it, you're certainly welcome to. I could just see if members of committee would like to ask questions about the comments you've made. I think we've got pretty good documentation. The one thing that I don't think's in our documentation, my understanding is the home-based business is dog grooming? Yes. Okay, thank you. So are there any questions from committee? Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. So that was one of my first questions. So is it just going to be yourself and your wife that are going to be doing the grooming, or your wife, sorry, that'll be just doing the grooming?
Pretty much, yeah. We have a girl that comes in and helps bathe.
Okay, and I think that was all I had. Yep, that was it. Just wanted to make sure that was done. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else from committee have any questions? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. So I appreciate what you already told us, but it's still a bit fuzzy for me as to the chain of events.
Okay.
So my understanding is, so you have these plans prepared.
Yes.
The plans that we have today, those are the plans that you took to our planning department?
They were submitted for a building permit, yes.
Right, okay. And so they reviewed them at that time, And did they identify that there was a need for a variance at
They-
that time?
No, we were issued a building permit, and when they came to inspect when we were digging the foundation, they said we had to apply for a variance from highways because of how close we were to the highway or whatever. He said, we were told that they would issue a stop work order unless we applied for the permit or for the variance, which we did, and we received, and we were told we could go ahead. So we went ahead, and foundation was poured, building went up.
So the building went up, did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the foundation was poured and it's been framed and the roof is on. That's about it right now. And after that was done, about a month later, another inspection was for plumbing, and that was okay. And then another inspection, somebody came over after that and said we're too close to the fence. The original building was only about 18 inches away from the fence. We were under the impression that the amount of time or space that we needed to be from the fence was 4.5 feet, but that was for a temporary building or a non-permanent structure. The lack of competence on the part of the contractor who asked me to go down and pick up the permits because I worked just down the street, so he thought it was convenient for me. When I asked, I wasn't aware that there was a difference between a permanent structure or what the structure was originally on.
Okay, so I guess I'm wondering, so when you submitted your plan to the town,
Yes.
did it not sort of, I presume it would have had shown where the building was proposed to be situated?
Yes, that's where the problem came up. We were under, it was 4.5 meters, and we were under the impression it was supposed to be 4.5 feet. Again, we put our faith in the contractor to take care of this sort of thing.
Okay, so you submitted a permit, we approved it,
Yep.
and then town staff came back later and said, oh, by the way, you need a variance.
You need a variance from the highways to continue,
Okay.
so we,
And then you got that?
yes,
And then you poured the concrete, you started the building?
yes,
You had another inspection? They
yes,
said it was okay?
yes,
And then a third inspection came and said, you have to stop.
yes.
Okay,
They put a stop work order because we were too close to the fence.
okay, gotcha. Okay, so I think I got that part.
Okay.
Good. So just in regards to the type of business, so it's a grooming business. How, and you guys have operated grooming businesses in the past, I gather? or-
Absolutely, we are at this point, yes.
Okay, so how many clients would you plan for during the day?
See 4 to 5 dogs a day.
Okay. And I guess you haven't gone through the process yet to get the business license?
We already have a business license, not for this location though.
Okay,
As soon as we get the building up,
yeah.
we'll apply for
I guess
license.
what I'm pondering in my mind, and the reason I'm asking you these questions is that, you're in a residential
Yes.
neighborhood, and with dogs coming and going throughout the day, you note that you do have one employee that comes in.
Yeah,
And my understanding from the rules with home occupations, and maybe staff would tell me if I'm wrong in my understanding, but my understanding is that home occupations are limited to the people who live on the site, so no employees. So I guess I'm just trying to clear up some of those
Yeah.
details for you, because it would be disappointing for you to go get these variances and set up, and then only for us to say, oh, by the way, you can't operate that
yeah.
type of
Councillor
business.
O'Keefe, maybe we could let
Yeah,
staff
okay.
clarify.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, maybe I'll let Ms. Verhagen provide some clarification on home-based businesses.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair to the committee. So home-based business regulations are set out as the conditional use regulations for those happening in single and two-family homes are in section 4.2.6 of the zoning bylaw. So the second point in there, 4.2.6A II, says they're permitted provided that they have only residents of the property engaged in the business with the exception of daycares, which are like childcare facility daycares, which may have additional non-resident employees. Further down in the section, it does 4.2.6C, number 4, says high traffic home occupations, which are ones like a dog grooming business receiving clients to the business at the home. Also permitted, provided that they have no more than 2 customers or clients in the unit at one time, again with the exception of daycares being for children. So that's what the bylaw says about those 2 aspects.
Just to, yeah, so just to follow up to staff on that one. So my reading of the zoning bylaw, so the one that we were just talking about in terms of high traffic home occupations shall be permitted provided that they meet all of the other conditions that were previously mentioned in regards to home occupations, which included that they only have residents of the property engaged in the business. So it seems to me that that is a clause that is in play here, or am I misreading that?
No, that clause would pertain to this business.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be a condition of the license when it is issued for this location. So in a situation like this where a business owner is contemplating moving their business to a new location, they would submit a change of address form, and then any new conditions that pertain to that new location would be reviewed and applied to the new license when it's transferred over.
Okay, so I'm gathering from this then, the one employee that they have would not be permitted to have employees.
That's what the zoning bylaw says.
Okay, so I guess I'm just
Yeah.
highlighting that and pointing that out to you.
That would be fine. If that's the way it has to be, that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, okay, and, yeah, I think that's it for me, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I have no questions and didn't see any further. I'm prepared to make a recommendation if there are no further questions.
I'm not.
I beg your pardon, I do if.
Sir, I will cede the floor.
Councillor Rintoul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just further to Councillor O'Keefe's line of inquiry with respect to process and how this unfolded. I'm not so much worried about getting the business license in due course, because that's something that's incumbent on you, sir, to obviously understand that process, and you've built this premises for that purpose, and so I'm sure you'll know to comply with the requirements around the business license to operate your business. My question again with respect to process is around timing. So you've got a survey here from Way Mainberg Land Surveying. It's actually a building location certificate which shows the building, and the date on here is the 31st of May. So what was the catalyst for you to get the building location certificate, if I may ask?
The building, are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, did the town require you to present the building location certificate?
Yes, I believe Allison has the answer to that.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Rintoul, a foundation survey or a building location certificate is a required item before a framing inspection can be done. So in this case, when that foundation survey was received, our process is to review those as planning staff before, and then give the building inspection staff just comment back whether it complies with the zoning bylaw or not, or if there's any issues, and that's where this location issue was flagged.
So this is what triggered staff's follow-up. The building location certificate triggered staff's follow-up with respect to the location of the accessory building and the property line. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, a question?
Yeah, through to staff, I'm understanding, I think the applicant's chronology events, I'm trying to understand a bit more from town's perspective. From what I understand, so he applied for a permit, a building permit, and it was approved, and so he proceeded with construction. And then a second inspection, there was an inspection done, which allowed him to move forward with whatever he was doing. And then the building construction started. And then after the town's sort of third interaction, it was identified that there had to be a stop work order. So I guess what I'm wondering is, when we issue a building permit, do we not look at like what variances might be required, or before we would issue a permit? How does that part of the process work?
Yes, that is part of the review of a building permit, is that planning staff and building staff do review it against bylaws for compliance. As the proponent indicated before, there may have been some miscommunication about whether the plans indicated a setback of 4.5 meters or 4.5 feet off of that east property line adjacent to the highway. So the zoning bylaw requires a minimum setback of 4.5 meters to the highway. As the applicant said, they obtained a variance or relaxation of that requirement from the Ministry of Highways, which was provided to town staff. The building permit was issued. And then the building permit, I can't speak to how many interactions happened on site between our building inspection staff and the builder or the property owner, but they would have had to get inspections done as per the schedule that's stated in the building permit. Yeah, it was when the foundation survey came in that staff caught the setback that didn't comply to the zoning bylaw requirement for 4.5 meters from the highway. And it's fine that the Ministry of Highways relaxed it, but that doesn't remove the need for a variance from the town for the same setback requirement.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll just say thank you for your patience. It's obviously been a lengthy process. My understanding, it's been a series of unfortunate circumstances that have gotten you to the point where the thing's already built and now you're looking for a variance. But this isn't the first time it's happened. So the process is somewhat formal. If we approve advertising for the variance, it's still got to get advertised, and there's still a few more weeks to go. So bear with us.
Okay.
Have patience. So, Mayor McNeil-Smith, you were going to make a motion?
Thank you, Chair. I will move the recommendation that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 2130 James White Boulevard West be notified regarding development variance application number DV100325 to vary the required minimum setback for structures adjacent to Highway 17 and the maximum permitted floor area for home occupations with accessory structures, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council at the time of consideration of approval of the variance.
Second.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you. Just to speak briefly to it, I think Councillor Chair Wainwright has certainly covered the unusual circumstances of that aspect of it. We see that that Highways is approved, the variance from their standpoint. We can see from the aerial photograph that there is probably limited impact on neighboring residents given this location. However, it is part of our process to provide tenants or residents and tenants in adjacent, so that's part of the process to do that, and I'm supportive of this moving forward.
Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. I'm supportive of it moving forward. Just one more question back to staff. So we've covered I think I understand the what's happened with the setback and the confusion with that. What I'm less clear about is that the variance for the size of the building. So presumably that was clear from the beginning. So my question is, if we knew that the building was oversized at that point, how does our process normally work? I guess I'm wondering why we would issue a building permit when we knew a variance was required for the larger size of the building.
Thank you for that. That zoning bylaw requirement may have been inadvertently overlooked by staff when they were reviewing the building permit plans. Otherwise, they would have mentioned that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. So they will advertise the variance application, and whatever comments come in will get forwarded to council, and that'll come back to a future council meeting. Usually takes a couple of weeks for the advertising notices and such to go out. Staff will let you know when it's scheduled to come back to council. And it's not necessary for you to attend, but you're certainly welcome to.
Okay, I appreciate your letting me be here. I'm very brand new at all this. I have no idea what's going on. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. So that completes our agenda for tonight.
I'll move adjournment.
So, and is there a seconder?
Second.
So moved and seconded, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.